We've got another wave of prospects getting called up. We've got about a month of action since the All-Star break to review. All that and more coming up on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Jeff Erickson here with the Fred Zinke back from his failed mission of getting Brandon Ayuk traded to the Cleveland Browns. Instead, actually, I know you were just traveling all the Great Lakes, every single one of them. Superior was tough, but you made it. Welcome back. Glad to have you back. How you doing?
I'm good. Actually, we don't usually do this at the start of the podcast, but I'll give you a quick, speaking of the Cleveland Browns, 30-second story. I was in Chicago last week. On my way to Chicago, I took the whole family through Cleveland. We stopped to watch a Browns training camp practice. I think I told you about that off the air. We were there for about 30 minutes. The practice was just about to start. We had driven 6 hours to get there. Tornado warning. The whole place cleared out. We didn't see 1 second of practice. And then we continued on our way. I drove the kids, all my boys. I have 2 sons. I drove them all the way there. They're super excited to watch an NFL practice. Like I said, we were there maybe half an hour or so, just kind of walked around, seeing the things around the practice. We were just about to start. All of a sudden, those alert buttons went off on our phones, and they said everybody had to leave. And bad weather did actually come through. At least they didn't, I guess, clear for no reason. But anyways, that was my speaking of Brandon Ayuk and the Cleveland Browns. Sounds like he's going to stay in San Francisco. Not the topic for tonight, but
Yep. There you go. All right, good stuff. I greatest laid plans laid to waste. So it goes. Lots of players to discuss. The Rays kind of under the radar called up Junior Caminero. He's got to play every day, right?
Yeah, the Rays have already said that he's going to play regularly. Now, it's the Rays, so he still could get a day or two off a week. But they said that he's going to play regularly, so let's take them at their word. So now, for fantasy purposes, comes the decision on what is the value of Junior Caminero if he's playing regularly.
Right.
Well, this season, his numbers in the minors, they're fine. He hits for power. So I think for people who haven't thought too much about him, in the minors, he's a career 307 hitter. So you got a pretty good chance that you'll get some batting average from him. Excuse me. Sorry. And he has power. He has 16 homers in 59 games this year. Last year, he hit 31 homers in 117 games. You're not going to get steals. He's got 1 steal this year. He had 5 last year. So if you got 1 or 2 steals down the stretch, that'd be it. So if you're grabbing him, you're grabbing him for a corner infielder who can hopefully hit for average and can hopefully hit for power. We haven't had great success with minor league hitters when they first come up this year. We've already haven't gotten anything out of Kobe Mayo, which we were all excited about.
Right.
But they're all their own unique individuals. So I think Caminero is worth a shot if you still if you still have the fab left for him.
Yeah, I think so too. He did start today. Of course he did, but you like seeing that aspect of their tough draw against the Astros, of course. In this case, Kikuchi pitched again pretty well, not as dominant as his first start for the Astros, but still pretty good. Caminero went 1 for 4. He did strike out 3 times, but that one hit was a hard hit. And of course, you just got to give him time. You got to let him kind of work his way through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe you'll get lightning in a bottle. You probably, like I said, with what we've seen from rookies this year, you probably won't. He's 21 years old. He's obviously super talented and in the long run should be awesome. But he's 21. He's coming up and joining a pretty mediocre lineup. He hit 5th today, so that's good news.
Yeah,
it's against a lefty, so and he's a right-handed bat. So let's just see where they put him in the lineup against righties. But yeah, I think on Sunday, like I said, I think if you have the fab left, he'll probably be at the very top of your queue. Whether you spend a significant portion of what you have left for him will kind of just depend on need. How bad it's so late in the season, right? How bad do you need a quarter infielder, and how much would home runs and batting average mean to you?
Yeah, I think that's right. About Caminero too, it's you were talking, you mentioned Kobe Mayo. he started off like 0 for 15 on a road trip with 10 Ks, and the O's are in the middle of a playoff race. So
Yeah.
they don't really have the luxury of letting him work his way through it as much. I mean, they could theoretically still, because they're the O's and they're so good, but they're in the midst of a race. So that kind of changes the equation a little bit there. We had a Twitter question. Jack was asking, what about Caminero's teammate Christopher Morel? Impossibly unlucky, as he said. Is he a drop? You go crazy. What would you do with Christopher Morel?
Yeah, he has been impossibly unlucky. So he was a 1 going into tonight. He had a 115 BABIP as a member of the Rays. So I mean, he's hit 2 home runs in 11 games played for the Rays. So I mean, that's something. Like,
Right.
a home run every 5 games is pretty good. No, I don't think he is necessarily a drop. Like they hit him clean up again tonight. Like they've hit him clean up basically every game. I think he hit the nail on the head. He's been impossibly unlucky. So I think if he's someone you would normally, like, we don't know league context, how deep the league is, things like that. But this year he's got 20 homers and 8 steals. So maybe he's on pace for about 25, 26 homers and a dozen steals. It's just the batting average has been really bad, but the BABIP's been super low. I think you stick with him if you normally would.
Yeah, I think so too. I might even try to trade, buy really low in a trade for him in a league too, especially if you're hurting for power, you got to kind of literally swing for the fences. I think that's something that you should consider doing a little bit there. As opposed to Caminero, Jordan Walker didn't start tonight for the Cardinals in their loss to Hunter Green and the Reds. They're now like 6th in the wild card race in the NL. They're only a game above the Reds. Reds have beat them the first 2 games of the series. He hasn't given us a sign. He's still looking for his first major league homer of the year. He's hitting 148. He's gone 0 for the first 2 days of the last 2 games. Or I guess last game he got called up. I'm sorry, he got called up Monday, went 0 for, didn't play today. So kind of interesting to see how they're using him too.
Yeah, as you say, like they're desperately hanging on, kind of not hanging on, like they're in that where like things have to go well in the next, say, 2 weeks or so for them to carry any much hope into September. I think the better teams are starting to pull away from them, right? Like I think you and I identified at the trade deadline when we did the trade deadline recap that the Padres, the Diamondbacks, once they got their pitchers back, the Mets, like those teams have better rosters. So I think this all makes sense. Back to Jordan Walker. I'm not that excited. Taking a look at his minor league numbers this year, like they're really poor. He hit 257 in AAA this year, 9 homers in 78 games and 4 steals. Like a 747 OPS.
What happened to him?
To me, this is someone whose prospect status has really plummeted. It's like I'm not writing him off, like obviously for his career or anything. He's 22 years old, but like I don't think he'll even be in my waterfall this weekend.
Yeah, I might. Again, I think it's also a question like how desperate you are. Like in a 15-teamer, maybe you got to swing for some upside. Maybe that's the approach there. But I get it. We're sneakily we're getting more options, and then in September we're going to get 28-man roster, so we get a couple even more options then too. But this is the interesting time to kind of keep your eye on the ball and see who's actually producing. The Uncle Ted specials, as those of us who have watched him in the stream all year, the guys that he suggests, a lot of these guys, are going to get more playing time. It's really important to kind of watch for that and see who is getting that playing time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jordan Walker has that name value, but like for example, right here, my Blue Jays, like they're playing like 5 rookies a night now. So I would be more apt to watch and see, and we might talk about one of them here in a minute, but I might be more apt to watch and see which of those players that, is playing well, because they're going to play every day, because the Jays are looking for towards the future anyway. So I need to see something from Walker before I even consider it. I think even in a 15, like I said, like I have a 15-team league where outfield, I can think off the top of my head, where outfield is the weakness, and I don't think I'm going to go after him.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
Zebby Matthews made his debut for the Twins today, got the win against the Royals. 5 innings, 2 runs allowed, 5 Ks, no walks. If you've been paying attention, you notice the no walks is a feature, not a bug. It's something that we kind of expect with him.
That's right. Now here's someone I am more interested in after I threw cold water on Walker and was kind of lukewarm on Caminero for his prospect status. So Zebby Matthews having a really nice season in the minors this year. So in 97 innings, got 114 strikeouts and only 7 walks, as you mentioned. This is consistent with his work last year as well. A 2.60 ERA, a 0.87 WHIP. So he's someone who's pitched really well, has risen up through their farm system very fast. Like he started this year in high A, then moved to double A, 4 starts in triple A, and he's already up in the majors. So, and it's not someone who's, like this hasn't come out of nowhere, but we're talking about someone who's an 8th round pick, 24 years old. So this isn't like they got this guy to college and he was
Right.
10th pick of the draft and they just knew he'd rocket through the system. But to me, Zebby Matthews, I think will be really interesting on Sunday as someone to bid on for a couple of reasons. One is we see pitchers like as the season goes on here, we're starting to lose. When we lose pitchers now, like there aren't really a lot of replacements. I'm noticing the pitching on the waiver wire the last couple of weeks, like starting pitching is not really. There's been a bunch of possible closers, like the shakeups at the trade deadline and things like that. But on the starting pitcher side, I haven't found much the last couple of weeks. So there may not be a lot more interesting available for starting pitcher. And then beyond that, he has 2 starts next week. So he's got an at San Diego and a home to the Cardinals. So there could be a quick way for someone to get 10 or 12 strikeouts next week.
Yeah, absolutely. His opponent in this game was Seth Lugo, and Lugo's kind of been leaking oil lately. Another bad start tonight against the Twins. 4 innings, 9 hits, 8 runs, 7 earned, 2 walks, a homer. He's up to a 3.04 ERA, which, hey, that's great. 3.04. Well, he was at 2.17 on June 30th. Since then, at Colorado, at Boston, good starts against the White Sox and at the Tigers, bad starts again against the Cubs and again against Boston, and now the Twins. A lot of this is he's been a good punch down guy. He's been beating the teams he should be beating. Unfortunately, the schedule's gotten tougher for them and for the Royals. Royals have a pretty tough schedule the rest of the way too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, he's in there. He's got 4 like really bad starts out of his last 6, 2 against Boston. Yeah, 1 against the Twins, 1 against the Cubs. Those starts are difficult. Like they're not like incredibly difficult, but they're difficult for sure. Boston's been a good lineup this year. The Twins have been a pretty good lineup, but yeah, I mean with Seth Lugo, like I think like we were all kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop maybe, and for him to have some struggles at some point this year. So I don't know if this is I don't know if he's first right now, but I know about a week ago, he was, when I was writing an article, he was first in the majors in innings pitched. So I don't know if this is a bit of an example maybe of just innings adding up and him going through, a bit of a dip, or if this is teams starting to get to him. But on top of all the runs that he's been giving up, like the strikeouts are fairly low in a lot of these recent starts. 4 in each of his last 2 starts, 3 in the start before that, 2 in the start before that. So he's not that he was getting huge strikeout numbers before that, but he was having some games with huge strikeout numbers, a lot of and some 8s and some double-digit ones. He hasn't had any of those lately, which makes me feel like maybe he's wearing down a bit.
Yeah. So he's a hold, by the way. I'm not dropping Seth Lugo.
No.
I might pick my spots with Lugo where I start him, but no, he's still a hold. I wouldn't get, I think there was a question, would you drop Lugo for Balazzo, who pitched well for the Marlins against the Phillies tonight? No, I wouldn't. By the way, the Phillies 7-16 since the All-Star break. I don't think people realize the extent of their struggles lately. When they took a series from the Dodgers last week, and it was their first series win since June. No idea that was that bad until I saw that stat. So, but hold on to Lugo for sure.
He's got, by the way, he's another guy. This is a dilemma, though. Definitely hold on. I would also start him next week. That being said, it's a 2-start week. Home to the Angels. That's good. Home to the Phillies. More challenging, even with their struggles. It's still got a lot of names in that lineup. I think you start him everywhere. Yeah. Like it would have to be a unique situation where, like, I didn't really need wins, and I was really protecting my ratios. In general, I think you start.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that for sure. Harley, my dog, agrees as well. He's like, start. Yeah. But he's very opinionated that way.
Yeah.
George Kirby had the Hunter Brown-esque bad line of the night, maybe the bad line of the month. tonight against the Tigers. A start where you thought it would be a good start, and instead, oh boy, he allowed 11 runs on 13 hits, only 1 walk, 5 strikeouts in 3 2/3 innings. The chef's kiss being a grand slam, and after he had already given up 2 other homers and he's down 7-1, they let him wear it. He gave up the granny after that. Just a brutal start. His ERA went from 3.13 at the start of this game all the way up to 3.7. It was hideous.
373.
373. I think there might be a stat correction. I'm looking at ESPN's box score right now. They're only saying 6 of the runs were earned, which would be like a godsend. It'd be 342 all of a sudden, but 3 homers allowed. He's been kind of, when you're not a big strikeout guy, you got to count on the ratios, and the ratios were not good today.
No, really frustrating. I mean, from a fantasy perspective, like as a fantasy manager, you can't beat yourself up over it because he was a no doubt start. Like, it's not like you sat and thought,
oh yeah, this is one you're excited about. Tigers,
do I start him or not? So you can't beat yourself up over it. It's really frustrating. Interestingly, I like you mentioning the 1 walk. It's amazing. Like, good start or bad start from George Kirby. He's not going to walk many batters. He went 7 consecutive starts without giving up a home run. Which, when you also don't walk anyone, is a pretty good recipe for success. Yep. And then he's faced the Tigers 2 starts in a row, and they've hit 5 home runs off him. Brutal. So 5 home runs in 8 2/3 innings. So I don't know what Detroit has figured out, but Detroit, luckily he doesn't have Detroit again next time out, but 5 home runs in his last 2 starts. Previously, he had, like I said, none in the previous 7 and only 11 on the season. For him. So I think it sucks, and there's probably some people who are going to check their team later today or tomorrow morning and be like, oh, I just moved down the standings. And we're getting to that point in the year where, like, it doesn't really even out, right? Like, if I have one of these type of starts in April or May or June, I'm like, well, whatever. Like, every team is going to deal with this once or twice a year. Whatever. I dealt with mine last night. You do get a point later in the year where you're like, oh, like, I don't have as much time to recover from this.
Yeah.
So it's in that regard, it's frustrating, but there's nothing you can do about it. He's staying in your lineup. He's an awesome pitcher. Yeah. It's funny because I just wrote an article last week recommending him as someone to trade for if you wanted to protect your whip.
Beautiful.
14 base runners tonight.
That's Nicky.
Yeah. ESPN can't do anything about that, and the official scorer can't do anything about that. 14 base runners tonight. But anyways, my theory on him was that obviously because he doesn't walk anyone, he's like the safest source of whip. Which over like seasons he is, like 104 last year, 102 this year. Like, he just doesn't need a ton of BABIP like over the season to have a good whip because the walks are so low. But tonight, not so much. So, yeah. Anyways, this one came out of nowhere.
It did.
It's not even a park. Like, it's not even a park that kills you. Like, he was in Detroit.
It just, sometimes it just happens.
Yeah.
And so it goes. In that game, Kerry Carpenter hit 2 of the 3 homers against him. And, that's just been one of the stories there so far, is that, he's back, and he's someone that can help you down the stretch run here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Kerry Carpenter's a bit of an underrated. This was his first game back. A bit of an underrated, I've always found, fantasy asset. Last year, 278 with 20 home runs and just 418 at bats. This year, going into tonight, he had 8 home runs in just 145 at bats. It was hitting 283. Like, he's a quality hitter, and he's probably sitting on waivers in, I don't know about 15s, but definitely I'd say some 12s. He'll be sitting on waivers. So he's someone. So I would take Kerry Carpenter over any of the prospects. I'd take him over Junior Caminero for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I would too.
I think Caminero could be good, but a good Caminero probably kind of looks like Carpenter. Like, Carpenter's a career 275 hitter who, if he could stay healthy and play full time, is probably like a 25 home run guy, maybe a little more than that even. Like, that's at this stage in his development, Caminero would be doing well to hit 275 with a 25 homer pace. So I'd rather take the guy who's already done it in the majors.
Yeah, for sure. I hear you on that one there. Got some questions in the chat about Lane Thomas. In 50 plate appearances for the Guardians, Thomas is hitting 109, 180, 152, 40% K rate, no RBI, 2 runs scored, no stolen bases. I mused beforehand at the time of the trade that I was worried it would hurt
Yep.
his trade value. Then, like, we saw him batting second. I'm like, oh, maybe not. Yeah, he's been horrible since the trade. I don't even know what's going on here, but man, he sat out today. He sat out 2 of the last 3 days. This is bad news.
Yeah, he clearly doesn't seem to be comfortable in Cleveland. Like it'll probably work itself out eventually, but I think in fantasy leagues, like he's obviously a bench for right now, and I think I could see in some leagues him being a drop. We talked at the trade deadline about how we were worried about his steals because the Nats were letting him run aggressively, and we weren't sure if Cleveland would do that. And if he took away those steals, like even with Washington, he had 8 homers, so and was hitting 253. Like if you took away if you had him at half the steals or something, all of a sudden he's a pretty marginal fantasy outfielder. So now you factor in that he's ice cold. We still have no idea if Cleveland will let him run because he's not even giving himself any chances to run. Yeah, I think he could be a drop. I don't know if 15s. I mean, 15s that'd be a tough drop. Maybe it's a bench, and hope he works his way out of it. But
Right.
in 12s, I could actually see him being a drop.
Should be a bet. This one affects me directly in the main event league we have, which is circling down the drain. It's so frustrating. Do I start Miguel Vargas or Charlie Blackmon over him? I mean, that's Jordan Walker over him. I mean, going back there, that's the thing. You have to kind of you got to make these calls. And you take a look at those rolling averages and all that. You don't know why he's slumping like he is, but the fact is he is. You don't want to try to time the market. It's too late, by the way. Market's already timed us. It's Soviet Russia. Market times you. But yeah, it's frustrating. It's tough to decide.
Yeah, and I was gonna say different than Christopher Morel. Like there's some things wrong here. Like you said, like he's striking out just so incredible. Like he's not playing well. He's definitely been unlucky as a member of Cleveland. Like the BABIP's 192, but like that's the tip of the iceberg. He's striking out way too much. Even if that BABIP was a healthy like 280 or something, he'd still probably be hitting under 200. Yep. So he's actually not. It's not unlucky. He's not playing well, and that's why I think if nothing changes for the rest of the week, I would be for sure looking to grab someone off waivers to at least move them to my bench.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about some stats that have been accumulated since the All-Star break. But first, got a quick note from our friends over at DraftKings and the Pick 6 app. Did you ever play the over-under game with your friends? Think I can eat that slice of pizza in under 30 seconds, or I know it'll take over a minute to down that 2-liter. If you have, then you're going to love Pick 6, the new fantasy game from DraftKings. Here's how to play during baseball season. Pick between 2 and 6 players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat, like runs, hits, strikeouts, and more. Track your picks and play against others for a shot to win huge cash prizes. That's all there is to it. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code RWPicks. New customers play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. That's code RWPicks for new customers to play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. One per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 18 plus in most eligible states. Not available in all states, including New York and Connecticut. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Here with Fred Zinke, and we're talking about some of the stats accumulated since the All-Star break. We've got a month of stats here to do. What has happened to Luis Robert? He is so bad right now.
Yeah, it's been incredible. Like he has been as bad as any hitter in baseball since the All-Star break. Often when I write up articles, even if I'm talking about benching White Sox, I'll usually throw in the qualifier of like, well, you start Luis Robert, and then you bench all the rest of them. I think I'm done with that. I think in some leagues it will make sense to bench him. So he has the most strikeouts in baseball by a wide margin. I think going into today, he had 7 more strikeouts than any other player in baseball since the All-Star break. And then on top of that, like his slash line is was incredibly bad going into tonight in the second half. It was 155 on base percentage.
Wow.
and then you throw in the fact that like he's not going to go like ass backwards into run scoring in that offense, where you're like, hey, Hartley gets on base, but the guys around him are so good, like Alex Verdugo, who like I have on a lot of teams, and he'll have decent run score totals this year just because of who he hits around. That Robert's the opposite of that. I don't know if he's just mailed it in because the team's so incredibly bad or what's happened here, but I think I don't think he's not a cut, but I think I would evaluate from like week to week or half week to half week, depending on my league settings, whether I want to start him or not.
I crossed that bridge this week. I have him in 2 leagues, one in the 12. Ironically, I'm starting him in a 12 and benching him in a 15. It's just the 15 happens to be a little stronger in the outfield in TGFBI, and I decided to finally bench him there. I've just had enough. He went for 1 for 4 with an RBI today, so that would have been like a awesome day for him. But yeah, it's been wild to see how bad he's been. He slumped before the non-trade. That's why I don't really want to, say the mailing in started before the trade deadline. Is my point.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not hating on him, like in the sense, like what's happening to the White Sox this year is beyond just a bad team. Like we're talking historically bad. We know that tends to can bleed like through the roster. Just the depressive state of everything that's going on there. So like I say, like this isn't a bad team that's going to win like 68 games or something like that. Like this is a historically bad team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's not like everyone. I have Andrew Vaughn actually in a couple leagues, and I've still been using him often. He's actually hit fine. So it's not like everybody, you know what I mean? Like everyone on the team, can't get out of their own way. Like, actually, before I say that, Vaughn actually totally stunk in July. He was really good in June. Overall, in the last, like, say 2.5 months, he's actually been good. It's like since the beginning of June. So he did kind of stink in July. He's been good so far in August. So anyways, he's just someone who I thought of who, if you take like say the last 2.5 months, he's actually been decent and worth having in a 15 team lineup, and even a 12 maybe streaming. So it's not like everybody on the team, but it's most of them. And yeah, that's where I'm at with Robert. I wouldn't cut him, and I would go like scoring period to scoring period, deciding kind of how many games they're playing, who they're facing, and do I think they have any chance to score some runs.
Aaron Judge is getting close to the Barry Bonds treatment now. 27 walks since the All-Star break. He's just crushing it so often. How early are you drafting him next year?
Yeah, it's funny. I think we're back to Aaron Judge in the top 3 or 4 next year. The only thing he's not doing this year that he did in 2022 is stealing bases. Like but he's still gonna finish the year with maybe 8 or something like that. He had 16 in that one huge year with the 62 homers. So he's not gonna be quite 62 homers this year, but he'll probably be in the 50s. So I think he goes back into the top 3 or so picks next year. It's funny. So now we're just like, we're doing the like in 2022, you could have bought a little bit low on him. He's coming off an okay 2021 season for his standards, and that was the value. Then in 2023, you had to spend a top 3 pick, and if you did, you didn't get the value. And now this year, you got a bit of a discount. You got him late in round 1, but then next year he's going to be back in the top 3. So like, should we just be trying to get Aaron Judge when he's cheaper and not get him the years that he's really good? And then the point that I mentioned in our notes that I think is worth talking about is all of the FanGraph projection systems, or pretty much all of them, recommended Judge this year as a top 5 pick. And I remember talking about this on Twitter before our labor draft, because I had the 4th pick. And when I looked at all those projection systems, they all told me that I should draft Judge. That if Acuna was off the board and like Witt and Julio were off the board, that I think they had Judge ahead of some of those guys. Like they all told me that Judge was the guy to draft.
Well, you do your own projections.
I do.
You do 3-year weighted averages as a starting point too, correct?
Not exactly, but
similar.
Judge came out for me more as the late round 1 pick that he is, because I budgeted in some injury time, because he's got a bit of checkered injury history in the year before and only played 106 games. And
the point I was getting at, and sorry, go ahead. The point I'm getting at is every time I do projections with Judge, if I give him full playing time, he's always a top 5 player. Every year he's that way. And I find myself like, I just can't do it. I'm going to downgrade him. And then how do you downgrade him? You have to decrease playing time, or, okay,
Yep.
I'll take away a stolen base. And you could take away plenty of stolen bases this year, and he still is going to rate there. That's the thing that's pretty awesome.
It's
So,
yes. If you project Judge for 150 games, he's in your top 3 or 4 picks, 5 picks, whatever. It,
yeah.
if you project him for like, but and this goes for any player. If you project Judge for like 135 games, and you take those 15 games or so out, then he falls back, and
Mm-hmm.
then you don't end up drafting him.
Right.
And then you have years like this. So one of my comments, like back in February, I ran this out on Twitter, and I said, like, am I overthinking this? Like, all of these projection systems are saying to pick Judge. Am I overthinking this? And everybody said, no, they don't know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
He's too injury prone. So I didn't take Judge. I took Corbin Carroll. We know how that went. And then and several other people passed on Judge, before he went in the back
Right.
half of the first round. And then I tweeted out again, and I'd say like late May, when Judge was doing amazing, and I said, like, hey, reflecting back on this original tweet from February, like were we given the answers to the test and we were just too
Refuse to
foolish to
take
just
him.
take them?
Yeah.
Right? Like, we were given the answers and we were like, no, I'm not. Those aren't the answers. Yes, they were. So, and then again, several people responded to my tweet and were like, yeah, it's May. It's late May, Fred. Well, let's wait and see what this guy looks like by the summer, because he's going to get hurt. And then, it's going to be everything that we said it would be. Several people responded to my tweet and said that. So I'll probably roll that tweet out again at the end of August and say, hey guys, it's too late now. It's September.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's already done enough to justify. By September, he will be at, 120 RBIs and 100 runs scored and over 45 homers, and that's it. It'll be over. If he got hurt at September 1st, he still would have been worth a top 5 pick.
Exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. I wonder next year, other than, I understand with some pitchers, because certain pitchers, like, we clearly see like their arms are not holding up. So
Mm-hmm.
like, and then maybe there's some guys like Stanton where there's so much injury history, but for most hitters, like, are we thinking too much about injuries? Are we believing too much that we can project, who's going to get hurt and who isn't?
It's a good thought. I
Yeah.
think it's a really good thought. Judge or Shohei Ohtani next year? UT only Shohei Ohtani.
Ohtani. I'll take Ohtani and get the steals.
Yeah, me too. I would too.
So
but it's going to be interesting because he's going to pitch next year. Does he get some time off? Does he not hit every time he pitches? Does he run a little less frequently? I don't know.
I'm done betting against Ohtani. I think
I'm with you on that.
Going to take Ohtani. With Judge, does it matter if Soto's back? That was my next point. Really crummy lineup if Soto's not back.
Well, it depends if they do.
I mean, I know it depends what else they do and everything, but that lineup, we've gone back to the old Luis Severino. You only have 2 hitters. Like, he's kind of right, and I guess they have
now Chisholm hurt himself.
Chisholm's hurt, yeah. I mean, they'll have Chisholm next year, but when you're looking at that lineup for next year, depending, like, if they don't re-sign Soto, they better grab like 3 players to rebuild that lineup.
Yeah, I think the odds are probably in favor of Soto going back to the Yankees. I think they can see what he does to that lineup, and they obviously can afford unless he really doesn't want to go there. I think that they've got the best chance of re-signing him, would be my opinion, especially because I don't think the Dodgers will be in the mix. So we'll see if anybody else. I mean, there'll be other teams, obviously, because there's always the mystery team, but I think the Yankees have the most spending power. Maybe the Mets too, I suppose, but I also think they have a pretty strong motivation to see what that does to the rest of the lineup, to have the 2 of them next to each other like that.
Yeah, I agree. And if they'll pay Soto, market value, staying in New York, the Yankees will be good. He'll have Judge to work with, but there'll be other players. Like, they always spend. It's a major media market. Like, as far as his chances of being like it's a great park to hit in. Like, as far as being a Hall of Fame player, like, it's probably a sensible spot for him to play out the rest of or for him to play out his prime years.
Yeah. Going back to our earlier conversation about Lane Thomas, Adam had a pretty good comment I wanted to highlight real quick. He said it's okay to cut anyone not performing in the last 6 weeks of the season. It's a what point. You need time for RotoStats versus name value. Absolutely. 100% agree.
I think 12 team and under, absolutely cut them. The 15s, it would be interesting because just if you're in it, a lot of people don't play 15s, but if you're in it doing, and you are just like me every week, like if you're doing waiver bids in a 15,
Mm-hmm.
the reality is some weeks you click on like outfielders and you just look at the list and you're like, oh my goodness, like I don't want any of these guys.
Right.
Right. Like, so when you're talking about cutting Lane Thomas, like there has to be someone at least that you're willing to use as a replacement.
Absolutely. I'm going to break my usual practice and talk positive about the Marlins. But first, quick note
Okay.
from the Blue Wire Network. All right. Thank you for your patience there. The Marlins, they won tonight. They've had a couple of players that are doing really well right now. Jake Berger, has already had more homers in the second half, 12 than he had in the entire first half. Strikes out a ton. We know this. It's okay. But this is the hitter they had after the trade deadline last year too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is almost like the ebbs and flows of a power hitter season.
Yeah.
Just coming into focus. Like he last year, 34 home runs, first half of this year, 10. And you're like, oh, if you drafted Berger, you're like, oh, I knew I shouldn't have believed, I knew I shouldn't have believed in him, but 13 home runs after the one tonight in the second half. So he's up to 23. Like he's got a decent chance now to get to 30 home runs. Yeah, like you said, like he strikes out a lot, but his batting average 250, it was 251 going into tonight. So it was 250 last season, still 251 after tonight's game. But so that's not hurting you like in a fantasy league. That's just kind of sitting right around probably where your team is. So yeah, he's totally recouped his value. Probably will end up, unless he cools right back off, but he'll probably end up going in a similar spot in drafts next year.
Yep. Teammate Xavier Edwards is the stolen base leader since the break, and by a wide margin too. We made the comparison on Sunday night, Edwards to John Birdie and how he won people's leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. From a 1 year perspective, I'm totally with you. From a just like looking ahead, like John Birdie, and I know Scott mentioned this when you guys were talking on Sunday night, like John Birdie was older and we kind of knew he was probably a bit of a flash in the pan. Xavier Edwards, I think, is really exciting. So he's 25 years old, and what I love it when like what he's doing here in the majors is just exactly what he did in the minors. Like he's a career 313 hitter, 313 in his minor league career, and that's for someone who's been playing in the minors since like 19 years old. This isn't like a college guy who went into the minors as a finished project. Like I know he started in the low minors, but it's someone who's playing in the minors at a really young age and was always a high average hitter at every level. So and really low strikeout rates. So I'm inclined to believe in this. I think the Marlins have, and I'm careful because I got a little excited about the Marlins back when all their pitchers were healthy going into this season. But I think the Marlins have like a couple pieces, like when the pitchers get healthy, they need help, big time hitting help. But they've found a couple pieces here with Edwards, hopefully with Berger. There's not much else in that lineup. There's might not really be anything else in that lineup, but they've got
we'll
so
see
many
what happens. Like they play Connor Norby when he gets the call. Like, what sort of prospect is he is? I still think Jesus Sanchez could be something, but it's running late on that. And it needs to happen pretty soon.
Yeah, I still we know pitching wins in baseball, and the Marlins have like a full decent rotation sitting on the injured list right now.
Yeah.
Like all five. They have six.
Isn't that the problem with building around young pitching?
It is. So
I remember like the Bill Pulsifer young gun Mets, that sort of era of pitchers.
It may never come to fruition. Like they may never be able to get 4 or 5 of these guys healthy and effective at the same time. But the lineup is miles away. But at least, like you said, they've got a couple guys right now at the top of the lineup. It's something.
It is. It is something.
And I really like Edwards. Like next year, I think I'll be pretty bullish on Edwards when I go to project him, as far as projecting like a high average, sizable steals total. Just even hitting leadoff on a bad team, with hitting for average, he can probably score 80, 85 runs.
Yeah.
Maybe 90 runs. Yeah.
I think they did a good job at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't get like that one stud prospect, but no one was trading that one stud prospect. I think they restocked their system though, and that's something that needed to be done.
Yep.
I think, I don't know if they traded anyone that was going to be part of their future either. So, I think they did what needed to be done. They also cleaned house in the front office this week too. I don't know if you saw that, but the GM that got hired this offseason, Peter Bendix, former Rays front office employee, basically cleaned house this week. So we'll see. I mean, at least I think this is a team that has a plan. I still think it's a cynical plan. They made the playoffs and then did nothing to try to improve the team. Maybe it was a realistic reflection of where they were as a team that got outscored last year, yet made the playoffs. Maybe that's really the point. But still, I hated seeing them tear it apart like that, just not try. Yeah. But yeah, maybe they're on the right path now, but it's going to be a long path to try to get there, though. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, I think they'll stink next year because the lineup will be so bad. If
for sure.
The one thing is like you can in free agency, I just don't know if they'll spend, but like you can grab respectable like major league hitters like for not huge sums of money. I'm not talking about stars, but like if Edwards and Berger, and if they could discover a couple more guys next year, and then and the pitchers are healthy, and then it's time to fill out the lineup. I don't know. It'll probably never work out, but it won't work next year. They're way too far away on offensively. For it to work next year. Next year's I think about getting the pitching right, and then maybe finding a couple more pieces. So
right. Yeah. Well, we're 30 years into them build up, tear down, build up, tear down. This has been their modus forever. They've kind of ruined the fan base a little bit there, I feel like.
Actually, I have a friend who was just at a Marlins game on the weekend and was texting me from there and said that it was pretty dire inside the building.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, they got this beautiful building too. I mean, it's say what you will, it's not a classic ballpark, but it's Miami. It doesn't have to be classic, but it's just how can you believe in the team when the team doesn't believe in itself? I think that's my point about that. And that's why I get frustrated that it's a great, positive, vibrant city. It should be able to support a team, no problem. But if the team doesn't support the city, though, I mean, that's what you get. Anyways, moving on. Vlad Guerrero, now a top 20 player in baseball for the season. Remember when we were talking about, oh my gosh, is he ever going to hit for power? Boy, he really took advantage of those minor league ballparks a couple of years during COVID. Well, he's the hottest hitter in baseball right now since the break.
Yeah, absolutely. Best OPS in baseball since the break. Came into tonight now batting .321 on the season. Like I can't believe I can believe, but it's hard to believe as a Jays fan who watched him at the beginning of the year when he hit .219 in April, that he would be competing for he's not really competing for a batting title. Like he's a little too far away from the absolute leaders, but he's certainly way up there. He's hit 318 or better in every month since the beginning of May. And the power wasn't there in May or April, but now that's taken off. 8 homers in June, 8 homers in July. Vladdy is my other guy with Judge, where all the projection systems were telling us to take him earlier than he was going in drafts. Like he was going in drafts, I felt like around early round 3, something like that. Like depends where, if it was main event time and pitchers got pushed up and he went down maybe a little bit to the middle of round 3 or something, but early round 3, and the projection systems had him higher than that. And I wasn't with them. I was because like I said, going into this year, 264 last year, 274 the year before. We really only had that year with all the minor league parks where it hit really well. But this is another one where the projection systems need to get some credit, because he's going to probably, he's showing no signs of cooling down. Like if he hits something like 320 this year with 30 or 35 home runs, like the RBI and run totals won't be massive because the Jays offense has been disappointing, but a real get back on track here for him.
Yeah. But funny thing is, for 2.5 months, you were right. And the projection, this has just been such a diametric change since then, though. Who are they? I'm really curious to see how this team reloads in the offseason, because they they didn't strip down. They just got rid of more spare parts than anything else. Like a Justin Turner, who wasn't going to be part of the team next year anyhow. A bunch of relief pitchers. They didn't trade away Bichette. Obviously, they didn't trade away Vladdy. They didn't trade Springer. What are they going to, but yet this lineup isn't enough. How are they going to make it enough?
Agreed. I think the Jays are actually, I haven't said much positive about them on this podcast this season, but I think they're doing exactly the right thing for where they're at down the stretch, where they're going all in on playing Spencer Horwitz, Will Wagner, Leo Jimenez, Joey Loperfido, Ernie Clement. Like they're playing them all every day.
Yeah.
Addison Barger will play
Agreed.
some down the stretch. And then let's see, like, let's just put these guys out there. These guys are prospects, but they're not, for the most part, these guys are 25, 26 years old. So they're not overmatched 21, 22-year-olds. So let's put these guys out there and see what they can do and see if,
Loperfido too.
yeah. And can we see if one or two of them look like a piece to the puzzle next year? And if, and then, okay, so we've got Vladdy, we've got Bichette, we've got Springer, Varsho, who I know hasn't hit very well this year, but I think he'll be on the team next year. His defense has been amazing. But let's figure out, like, do we have one or two more? And then what do we need? So they're kind of, I think, doing everything right for the crummy situation they're in, which is disappointing. They're doing everything right to kind of clean up from it. So, and then they can go into free agency. And now what they do in free agency and on the trade market in the offseason, that's what'll really decide it.
Right.
So, but I do like the fact that they're trying to figure out if any of these guys they got from the Astros or some of these guys who have been in their farm system for a while, if, like, are they major league ready? Could Will Wagner be the second baseman next year, or could Spencer Horwitz be a second baseman next year on the team, or something? Loperfido, I think, like, he was the guy we were coveting in fantasy back in April.
Yes,
we're dying for the Astros to bring him up. Now he strikes out like 40% of the time since he's joined Toronto, and he doesn't look like he's a major leaguer at all. So
he just is inspired by Lane Thomas. That's all.
Maybe. I felt like this would be like a big make or break for him because I knew the Blue Jays would play him a lot down the stretch, and they are. They tried to play him high in the lineup. That didn't work at all. So now they've been putting him near the bottom of the lineup, try to take some pressure off him. That's not really working either, but at least then he's not jamming up the whole lineup. Yeah. I mean, you can't have him striking out that much right in front of Vladdy. But anyways, yeah, the Jays are going to need offensive help next year. Guys have their jobs on the line. I think if Atkins is back, I think they'll go out and get offensive help because I just think, like I say, like, jobs are really on the line right now in Toronto.
Absolutely. Curious to see if, like, Clase gets the call before, like, in September.
Yeah, I think he will
see some playing time. See McAdoo's progression, because I like that ad. Not a sure thing by any stretch, but some upside there, and they need that there, and that will help guide some of their free agent decisions, perhaps, as well.
That's right. I mean, because they have pitched, like, well, whether Kevin Gausman's really good next year or not depends matter, and Chris Bassett, because they've both been a little disappointing this year, but they have named pitchers: Gausman, Barrios, Bassett. Those guys are major league rotation guys. Yariel Rodriguez has actually had more good starts, a lot more good starts than bad starts this year. So Jake Bloss can maybe be a fifth starter. Bowden Francis has actually had some okay starts recently.
Yeah.
So they
for
have.
Me, it's the offense. For me, it's
the
just
offense for sure.
Yeah.
But the bullpen's been atrocious this year. Like, I think they're
but a bullpen can be fixed overnight, though.
Absolutely.
I'm not even worried about that.
Yep.
For me, it's just score runs, especially in the AL East. You got to have a competitive lineup. And I think that's where they got to be. So I'm really kind of curious to see what they're going to do going forward there.
Yeah, for sure.
Couple other guys before we sign off here. Tanner Houck. I know, you mentioned Bassett. He's on my main event team. Tanner Houck's on my main event team. Tanner Houck has been really struggling. He even started right before the break. I think he had one start against a bad team that kind of camouflaged. I think he started against the White Sox. It was a respite there, but he hasn't been very good lately. I think last week I benched him. He's a tough guy to start right now.
Yeah, he's interesting because he's someone who, if you just look at his season-long numbers, like, you wouldn't even, like, 3.02 ERA, 114 WHIP. You're like, oh, I'm not even going to consider taking him out of a lineup, like even in a 12, let alone a 15. He's got to stay in the lineup. But then when you start looking start by start, like last time out, he only gave up one run, but he only got one strikeout. The previous start, he gave up 6 runs. The start before that, he gave up 4, 3 earned, and got 2 strikeouts. The start before that, he gave up 4 runs, got 2 strikeouts. Like he's not straight. What concerns me with Houck is he's not getting BABIP to death. He's walking a ton of batters. Like, he's averaged over his last 6 starts 3 walks per start, and then he's not striking batters out. This could go south it's already going south. It could go more south really fast if he can't start striking some batters out and get that walk rate down. He's got to start tomorrow against Texas, and then next week he's a 2-start pitcher. I'm just pulling it up. His first start is against Houston, and his second start is against Arizona. That is a really tough 2-start week.
Yep.
I would bench him maybe if.
Yeah.
And I was
the problem is like finding that alternative. I'm finding more guys that are slumping in the second half than I am that are surging. That's just the problem.
Right. Yeah.
But that's kind of normal in baseball too, by the way. But that happens. By the way, I noticed a certain pause in your cadence there. I'm sure you were watching as well as George Springer was losing his mind at the home plate umpire.
I wasn't actually. I don't have the Jays game on. My pause was just moving on the RotoWire projected starters from this week to next week.
Okay. That was George Springer just lost his mind. I've got the grid channel up. So I guess I was pausing in my thinking then, but Springer was going like he had to be restrained from Vladdy and he wasn't having it. Yeah. Wild stuff there, but tough season for Springer. So I guess that has something to do with it.
For sure. And he looked like he was slowly climbing out of it. Like in June, he had a 700 OPS, which is like not good, but it's at least now we're back to like basically major league average. And then July 848. So you're like, okay, George Springer is back. Like I know people in Toronto were like, oh, good. He stunk in the first half, but whatever. This season's water under the bridge now. He's back. He's good. So far in August, it's only 9 games, but he came into tonight with a 395 OPS. So he's probably getting frustrated again. Like, I don't know. I haven't seen what happened in tonight's game, but
I think it was a ball strike thing.
Yeah.
But obviously I'm not giving it full attention either. Trivia for those of us who are in the streaming here. No prizes or anything. Just want to ask the question. Blake Snell leads baseball in strikeouts since the All-Star break. Can you name the next 3 pitchers in strikeouts there behind Blake Snell? Meanwhile, while you come up with those answers, we're going to talk a little Elly De La Cruz because I need something good in my life. So Elly De La Cruz, he's still good at baseball. He's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I put in our notes that just nothing really seems to matter with Elly De La Cruz. He was second going into tonight's games. He was second in strikeouts in the second half, which is not good. But he's first in steals, and he's still batting .310, even with all the strikeouts. So, like, with Elly, I'm just like, you know what? This guy just racks up exciting numbers. I'm not going to get hung up on things like strikeout rate and stuff. He's going to strike out a lot. It is what it is. He's going to strike out 200 times this year. But he's also going to steal this year 70-something bases and hit, high 20s or something for home runs.
Yep.
And his batting average is 266. So with a fairly high BABIP, 368, but Elly's someone who's probably going to carry a high BABIP throughout his career. Right. He hits the ball hard. He's super fast. He's probably going to carry a high BABIP. So he can probably hold this strikeout rate and be a 250, 260, 270 hitter. So,
right.
He's just super, super fun. I think I will project him next year fairly generously. I'm not going to get hung up on strikeout rate. Like I'm going to project him for a sizable totals across the board. I'm not going to be like, oh, he strikes out too much, like big pullback coming. Like that's not Elly. Like this guy is
well, he's not Javier Baez. He doesn't swing at everything.
Nope. Yeah. He's just a big guy with a long swing and he strikes out sometimes. Like he also draws walks. Like Javi Baez doesn't draw walks. So
right. That's the difference. Yeah. So I don't worry about like his bat slowing down or something like that. That not to that degree. It will someday, but he's also young enough that it's not going to happen soon unless he suffers some sort of injury. That would be the caveat there, as always, about that. But all right, trivia wasn't seem to be catching fire, so we'll just reveal it to everyone here.
So I have to, before you reveal your trivia, some pitchers have pitched since I sent you the notes.
Okay.
So, but go ahead. So this at a time before a couple guys.
This was once correct.
This was correct when I sent you the notes.
So Blake Snell and he Snell dealt again yesterday. So that part's not going to be wrong. No. But the next 3 were Ryne Nelson, Spencer Arrighetti, and Spencer Schwellenbach. It's a good day to be a Spencer. Kind of like a good day to be Jackson's prospect's name Jackson. It's also been very good. To do that there.
So all of those pitchers have been passed recently by Sonny Gray, Framber Valdez, and Chris Sale, such as life for small sample sizes. But all those pitchers are all still in the top 5. They've got 36 strikeouts in the second half. They've all got ridiculously good strikeout to walk rates too. All of those pitchers were on waivers, whatever, I don't know, 2 months ago, 6
So
weeks ago.
pitchers that are surging now in response to my Tanner Houck dilemma there.
Yep.
There's some guys that hopefully you got on board. Like Ryne Nelson was available this week in leagues. Now he gets Boston this week. And I think, that could be painful. We could get that, someone could pull the rug out from under us on this, but he's been excellent. I really like to seeing the progress from Arrighetti. I mean, he did this against the Red Sox, for crying out loud.
Yep. Yeah, the swing and miss skills that he's showing right now are great. All three of these guys. Schwellenbach, I really like. Like he's probably the one of the three that I'm the most excited about. But Arrighetti, I'm excited about too. So, and all of these pitchers, like you said, Nelson was available very recently. The two Spencers, not quite so much, but also even the two Spencers, when you were acquiring them, they were not super expensive on the waiver wire. Like a decent bid would have got them for your team. So, and these are the types of moves that just fortify teams. I have one team that's been doing great this year that lost last week in one day, in 24 hours. I think it spanned 2 days, but 24 hours, they lost Joe Ryan and Grayson Rodriguez. That's a huge kick in the pants for a team that was doing great in the pitching department. So the Spencers, Ryne Nelson, these are the little moves that are the difference sometimes between hanging on to win your league and not, because you build up that depth, and then inevitably when someone goes down, like you have other guys to plug in.
Yep. It is, getting fab right is so hugely important.
And it's not always the big bids.
In fact, it can't, by definition, it can't be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's
you gotta win some of these small bids that work out too.
Yes. That's 100%. It.
100%.
That's $20 for this pitcher or $30 for this pitcher. And you nail some of the right ones. Yeah.
I want to go back to Elly real quick. We were talking about our Judge and Shohei. Where does Elly rank for next year? Is he top 3, top 5?
I think.
How bold are you going to be?
Off the top of my head, I'm going to put him behind Bobby Witt, Judge, and Ohtani.
Okay.
That's it. I'm good with him. I think after that, once I start crunching the numbers, I may put him up even higher, but I think off top of my head, I think all three of those guys that I just mentioned are huge stat monsters, just like Elly, but also like the best hitters in baseball. Whereas Ellie's really good, 849 OPS this year, but he's not quite on their level for hitters. So, but yeah, for example, Elly versus Juan Soto. I think an Elly, and I'll just take all those extra steals.
I mean, it's hard to pass that up, right?
I'll take my extra 70 steals or something like that, and the home runs aren't that far apart. So
9 going into today, and I think Soto homered, so it's now up to 10. So
didn't Soto homer 3 times today, I think?
Yeah, so then it's 12. Good. Math is hard.
That's good.
The gap got bigger. The RBI gap is there too. That's the other thing. Elly hit second. He's got 51 RBI. He has 78 runs. He also has 59 stolen bases. I think I might take Soto just from the consistency sake. There's one other person that has earned more than Elly this year. It's not Shohei. Shohei, Judge, and Witt have earned more than Elly. Elly is 5th. Soto is 6th. Who is number 4 in earned auction value this year?
Who is number
hitter?
4?
It's another hitter.
Who's earned as much as those guys? Jose Ramirez?
Yes.
Ramirez. Let's go. I'm not amazing at trivia questions. So
89 runs scored so far, plus 31 and 26. I mean, he's doing it all.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the other day with that, if you just drafted, if you're in the back end or the middle of a draft this year, if you just drafted guys who were drafted really early the previous year, you would have drafted Judge, you would have drafted Ramirez, and you would have drafted Trey Turner. And Trey Turner's actually played pretty well he just missed a lot of time. He's actually played, he's hitting 311 going into tonight. It hasn't been amazing because of the injuries and everything, but anyways, I thought if you just drafted the fallers from the previous year, and I was like, is there something to be learned from that? Next year when Julio's way at the back end of the first round.
He might not even be first round.
He might, right. So is there a lesson to be learned with the fact that Judge, Ramirez, Ramirez was top 5 pick and top 4 in a lot of leagues the previous year, and then fell to the very back of the first round.
More extensive resume for Ramirez,
For sure.
I would say, than Julio. It's hard to give Julio that credit just yet. At least he didn't strike out 5 times today like he did on Sunday, so he's got that going for him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. The Ramirez thing with the monster totals in runs and RBI, like I definitely did not see that coming at all, in the sense that, like, I didn't think Cleveland's offense has cooled. Like it was more top 7, top 5, even maybe a little bit at one point. Now it's more like just barely above average, but even barely above average, I did not see coming. And that was a big part of his poor value the year before, is Cleveland's offense stunk. He had 80 RBIs and 87 runs. And then I looked at their offense going into the season and I was like, I don't think this offense is really any better. So I think, so I projected him more, maybe a little bounce back in runs and RBIs, but not the big one that he's going to end up with well over 100 runs. He might end up with 120 RBIs, at least 115 or something.
Yeah.
So I did not see that coming from this offensive group. I still look at that lineup and don't really like it.
Right.
Like even where Cleveland is in the standings, like good for them. But when I look at their lineup,
I agree.
I just don't see why this is I know that Ramirez has been amazing, and I know that Josh.
So is Naylor, and so is Quan.
Yep, 3 guys. It's been like the Yankees, except instead of 2 guys, it's 3 guys.
Yeah.
But everywhere else, I do not really like this lineup. Jimenez hasn't had a great year. Bo Naylor hasn't been good. It's got all these kind of non-name guys. David Fry, the clock struck midnight.
But he carried the team for a while.
He did.
They're getting something out of Jackenzie Noel now. 3 homers last 2 days, so maybe that helps too. But your general point stands though.
I will probably project a lot of regression for Ramirez in the counting stats next
for sure. I think that's fair.
RBIs next year. So
yep.
Yeah, and I think he will fall. I could see him middle of the first round. I don't think he'll be up with Elly. Like once.
I don't think people realize how many bags J Ram has. I think that's the thing, especially out of a third baseman. That's a beautiful thing. Slugging third baseman that also has 26 bags. We're like,
I feel like younger guys, like, to get more buzz. The Gunnar Hendersons, like, I know he's cooled off.
Still pretty darn good. He'll be a first rounder next year.
And I think ahead of like Ramirez, I think there'll be more people who will get on him.
Wondering if there's another level. Sure.
Yes, exactly. So I think just Ramirez's age, and then projecting some regression with Cleveland in general. Like he might be picked like 14th or 15th this year, have this amazing year, and then get picked like 12th next year or 11th next year. I don't know. Mookie Betts will probably be ahead of him again because the Dodgers lineup will look ridiculous. And right. So anyways, sure. I see him still somewhere in there
for sure.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a good stopping point. We were talking beforehand about not making this an hour and 20-minute special. So let's hold to that there. Thanks for everybody chiming in the chat. Love having the live listeners there in the live stream. You guys are awesome. Thanks for that. If you like this podcast, please hit that like button, subscribe, review us. And if you really want to help us out, go check out the free trial at RotoWire, rotowire.com/pod. Check out our coverage, baseball coverage. But also, if you're getting ready for a fantasy football draft, check out our cheat sheets, our draft kit there as well. rotowire.com/pod. Big thanks to DraftKings and their Pick 6 app as well. Got James Anderson with his prospect pod tomorrow. Thanks for listening.